Well, good day there. This is Joe Van Cleve, and welcome to Typing Assignment number 11 results. And I really do look forward to going through all these pieces. We had really good participation this time, and it was a fun assignment. It was on the subject of Halloween. So, without any further ado, let's get into the slideshow and the comments after. All right, this first piece was by John Munro. He wrote it on a 1932 Royal Signet Senior, whose name or call sign is Runa. And this story is very interesting. As you may know, John lives in Japan, and this story was based on the Battle of Ueno that happened in 1868 in Japan, where a temple complex was destroyed, and it's near where John currently lives. And this piece was called Ghosts Across the Lane, and it is about a couple, Alvin and Runa, and they are in modern-day Japan just after a tsunami, a disastrous tsunami has struck. And as they're trying to fix their lives back in order, Runa is visited by the ghost of a woman from the era of 1868 Japan, and it was a very interesting story, and it not only covers a little bit of the historical part of Japanese culture, but I thought it was very interesting how John ties in this subject of sexual assault, because the ghost from 1868 alludes to the fact that the soldiers came through after the fighting. And of course, Runa in the story also indicates a similar thing happened to her. So she sympathizes or empathizes with the ghost. But it's very interesting, very timely, John. I thought it was very good. Thank you very much. Matthew Gilman's piece called Halloween 2025 was really fun. Matthew is a newcomer to our group. I welcome you. He wrote his on a 1939 Royal KMM typewriter, and his typewriter is featured in the story, in which it is Halloween of the year 2025, and he's finishing up a novel on his typewriter, and his ribbon is run dry, and he looks on the internet and finds, to his horror, that the last ribbon company has gone out of business. The end has come. The end of the typewriter era has come. And if that wasn't bad enough, the kids that are coming to trick or treat have decided to egg his house. And of course, yours truly, Richard Polt and Tom Hanks, play cameo roles in this story. This was a lot of fun, Matthew. Very cool. And I sure hope that in the year 2025 we will still have typewriter ribbons, or somebody figures out an alternative way of making them. But anyways, welcome to the series, and that was a lot of fun. And Diane Mayer's piece was written on a 1960 Royal Dart. So her piece was called To Halloween or Not to Halloween, and this is a great example of what these typing assignments can be. They don't have to be fiction. Diane's is a great piece because it is a from the heart blog article. Essentially, it's her talking about what she's going to do or not going to do this year for Halloween, how her life has been busy, and all the other things going on. It was fantastic, Diane. I really got a sense of where you're at personally and how things are, and it sounds like you have a very hectic life. And in this piece, Diane also alludes to her participation or her preparations for NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, coming up in a couple of days. So that was very cool to read. And it reminds me that, personally, we around the Van Cleve house, we haven't been doing a whole lot for Halloween other than putting out a couple pumpkins and having candy on hand. But I can definitely relate to the hectic life schedule, Diane. You take it easy and take care, and we will hopefully hear from you on the next assignment. So John's piece was written on the 1975 Olympia Traveler Deluxe, also known as the Time Traveler, and it is called Bus Trip to Graceland on November's Eve. And it is a really sweet story, a little vignette of Waylon, who was a diehard Elvis fan, has died, and his nephew Carlin is going to be taking his ashes across country via Greyhound bus to Graceland to spread his ashes. And this wonderful little story is just the vignette of Carlin interacting with the bus people in the terminal as he's waiting to board. Just a wonderful story, John. You did really well. It was really emotional, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Now, Andrew Nichols' story is more like it. This is a Halloween story, a little macabre, a little creepy, called Pumpkinhead, and it was written on a Hermes Baby typewriter, and it is about little Jimmy with a slightly big head, who is being picked on and taunted by his classmates, especially by Ben, the bully, who leads a little gang of bullies. But secretly, little Jimmy has this voice in his head, this little character that he's kind of invented as a self-defense mechanism. And on this Halloween, the voice in his head becomes a real person who slaughters the bully Ben and places his hollowed out head on Jimmy's front porch as a jack-o'-lantern. And Jimmy is now has now seen recompense come on from his bullies. So I thought this was a very fun story, very typically Halloweenish. Andrew, thank you very much. Alex's piece was really fun. It was written on a 1953 Smith Corona Silent, and he used a very nice, I believe it was a cursive kind of typeface. Anyways, he wrote a poem, and it's a very interesting poem about a Franny G who's writing this poem to a friend, Doris, about this creepy old house and this incident that occurred as she had walked by the house, saw a piece of paper taped to the front door, walked up to read it, and the scarecrow on the front porch, which she thought was a Halloween decoration, comes to life. So that was a very cool poem, Alex. I really enjoyed it. I like the rhyming scheme, and I've forgotten how fun poems can be. Yours was really good. Thank you. David Cornelius' piece titled Haunted Harvest was written on a 1957 Olympia SM3, and it's the kind of story that you always imagine people telling around the fire. But in his case, of course, it was a true-to-life story. He lived on the farm, and the old barn that was part of the original homestead before the newer house had been built in another part of the property, the old barn is where they housed the old tractors and the old equipment. This was a Halloween evening as they were trying to get the harvest in. A part broke on the tractor. He needed to go down to the old barn to get another part from an old tractor that was stored in the barn. And a little incident happens down in the old creepy barn. I love this story, David. And best of all, there's that true-to-life element of it. These are the things that cause us culturally to really make Halloween what it really is. Thank you very much. And Andy Kev's piece was wonderful. He wrote his also on an Olympia SM3 called Trick or Treat, and it really is a personal essay of what trick-or-treating was like as when he grew up and how it's changed over the years. And I can certainly relate to everything you said. It was great how the neighborhoods age over time, and there's not as many kids anymore in the neighborhood, and then new families move in, and all of a sudden newer kids come in, and the same ritual habits like the older kids discovering the houses that have the good candy and returning in different costumes. I think the only thing you didn't mention was lighting the paper sack of dog poop on someone's front porch and ringing the bell. But everything else about it I can definitely rings true in my experience as a youngster Halloweening in my neighborhood. Well done. I really enjoyed it. This next piece was by Kevin Kittle, and it was written on a 1919 Oliver No.9, which also stars in the story. It is called Victorian Presents, and this was really cool. It is about in Kevin's Victorian house that he custom built. One night there was a pigeon up in the belfry making a racket on the organ that he had left turned on, but in the ensuing aftermath, the typewriter downstairs in the office began typing on its own, and what was left on the piece of paper it said, "Close the attic windows." and Kevin says he swears this is true, that there are phantoms in the garret, but not bats in his belfry. So that was a very cool story, Kevin. We're going to have to talk about that when we meet. That sounds like a very interesting occurrence indeed. Your haunted Oliver typewriter. Very cool. Thank you. Oh, the next piece is written by Adam Santo. Adam, welcome to the Typing Assignment series. His piece was a wonderful little poem about how he loves Halloween, his favorite time of year. And I have several friends whose favorite holiday season is Halloween. And so Indeed, I loved your poem. I can definitely relate to this time of year in the Northern Hemisphere, the fall season, the autumn season, as we wind down from the heat of summer into winter. It is a special time indeed, and thank you very much for your poem. This next piece was a lot of fun. This was written by our participant who calls himself Scamperface, and it is called The Halloween Treasure, and it is about Jack and his three friends dressed up in costume. Instead of going out trick-or-treating house to collect candy, they go out into the creepy woods looking for the buried treasure that their friend Alex told them about, which is supposed to be indicated by an eerie blue glow on Halloween Eve. And they go into the woods, and sure enough, they see the blue glow, and they start digging and digging and digging, and then a giant spider comes up, and all hell breaks loose, if you pardon the expression. So it was a really fun story. I enjoyed it. Classic, campy Halloween story. It was a lot of fun reading. Thank you very much. Now, Ira Stone's piece called If Only the Grinch Would Steal Halloween, he wrote on an Underwood number 6, and I really enjoyed this piece. This is one of these pieces that I alluded to when I gave the assignment, that it could be about Halloween or it could be about against Halloween. And Ira, you have the talent of either a stand-up comedian or a humorist writer, because I love this. And this is a little personal screed about what he doesn't like about Halloween. And I'll quote part of his piece here. He says, "I know that somewhere in the ancient past, Halloween is connected to some legitimate religious tradition. But come on, little Batmen and Wonder Women walking around in small mobs, ringing doorbells and disturbing the peace of law-abiding citizens with the vague threat of violent retribution for being snubbed is a travesty." The whole piece was really funny, and you're a great humorist writer, Ira, and I would love to see you write more of this. This was fantastic. Thanks. So Ernest Steinbeck's story was written on a Smith Corona Coronet Automatic 12 with a big power return button, and it was called Halloween in Bachelor's Grove. And this was a great creepy story, very imaginative, and you even typed it in that combination red and blue ink that looks so cool. But this was written as a journal entry from a Jacob Polidori dated October 30th, 1967, where Jacob has gone to a little town, into a little motel situation to write with his Hermes rocket, and being Halloween, and being as Jacob has been creeped out by the hollows, the woods out behind the town, he comes across the creepy clown character and the creepy baby character, and ends up being holed up in his room with the creepy clown down there on the ground taunting him. And so, yeah, it was a very imaginative story. I loved it, and appropriate for Halloween. Thank you very much, Ernest. JOAO Rui Silva's piece called Hallowed Be Samhain's Eve was written on a Remington Rand portable number 5, and it was a wonderful piece. This Samhain is the Gaelic festival. It's been around for centuries and centuries, and this is a wonderful story, a somber tale of a child, a family awaiting their dead father's spirit, return of his spirit, who would visit them on the way to the other world, and about the festival that takes place during this time of year. And so it was just a wonderful piece. I really felt like I was there. There's the historical part of it was really powerful. So thank you very much, and welcome to the Typing Assignment series. Diane Cox's piece titled Hello, Goodbye was wonderful, and the title refers to the markings on a Ouija board. And it's really about her visiting estate sales and coming across the artifacts of a person who once worked in the oil industry, similar to what she had worked in earlier in her life, designing and drafting the plumbing and piping of oil rigs. And so this was a real fun piece, coming across this Ouija board with the markings of the company that the person worked for, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. And that is interesting, the hobby of collecting Ouija boards. That's very cool. Anyways, well done, Diane. Thank you. Paul Hopper had a really interesting piece I loved, and it was about this year he's decided he's not going to be giving out candy. And it's not because he's a curmudgeon or doesn't believe in Halloween. It's because in the last few years, he has been a ravenous giver of candy, setting up tables in front of his house and just giving away pounds and pounds and pounds of candy, so much so that there's a line of people waiting to get candy from him. And it was a wonderful piece, Paul, and I really appreciate your spirit of generosity in giving such a treat to so many kids, and also how it appears to be fueled by your love of Halloween as a child and all your memories from there, and I can really appreciate that. So definitely enjoyed your piece, Paul, and next year maybe I'll be standing in line for some candy in front of your house. We'll see. Thank you very much. And I should have mentioned that Paul's piece was written on a Royal 200 typewriter, and that was a very cool story, Paul. Thank you. Lastly is the piece I wrote. I didn't know what to write this year. I don't really have any great tales to tell of Halloween as a child. You know, lived in the suburbs and just went door to door like everybody else probably. But I did come up with this story early on Sunday morning. Maybe Saturday night, I guess it was. Stayed up late. I actually typed it out on an AlphaSmart Neo and then transcribed it onto this Olympia SF, which is sort of stars in the story, the fictional tale of a writer named Charlie who goes up to the cabin in the woods to do some typing, and things happen. Well, anyways, I really enjoyed this typing assignment. Such a diverse group of writers we have, and such a diverse approach to the subject matter of Halloween. And I don't really do any of the pieces justice in the brief comments that I give. I just hope that I can give you some flavor for how much I enjoyed it. Also, I'll say that several of us, myself included, used a little bit of a second page sheet of paper for the typing assignment, and I think that's fine. I know a lot of you have worked and struggled really hard to keep your pieces down to exactly one page, and that's probably a little too strict of a rule. I think going forward we'll probably just say one page ideally. You can run over into a second page. I just don't want to have 5-page stories and all that. It just gets to be too bulky. But you can overflow into a second page. That's fine with your future assignments. And speaking of which, I'll be issuing the next assignment hopefully sometime this week. And if not, it'll be next week. But until then, you guys have yourselves a happy and safe Halloween. And until next time, you have a great day.